Hello and welcome. Politics was in this man's blood from an early age as he watched his country go from being run by a dictator to becoming a politically progressive nation. He went on to become one of the most popular politicians in the country and was eventually elected to the top position. This week on One on One, meet the former Portuguese president and international diplomat, Jorge Sampaio. This popular politician has made many friends across the international diplomatic scene over the years, reflecting a political activism that dates back to his life as a student protesting against the fascist regime of Portugal in the 1960s. His companions may be leading figures now, but he started out as a lawyer defending many political prisoners. As mayor of Lisbon from 1989 to 1995, he gained a lot of popularity, setting him up for election to the presidency in 1996 and re-election in 2001. Sampaio went on to carve himself a reputation as an international diplomat after he left office in early 2005, heading up the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, promoting greater dialogue between the Muslim world and the West. President Sampaio, it's a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you.
And I want to start off by asking about your current work now. You've been the High Representative of the UN Alliance of Civilizations. It keeps you rather busy, I know. But what is your goal now? What is it you really are trying to achieve these days?
Well, in fact, it's a very demanding role. And it's to address the divides, namely cultural and religious divides that are everywhere in the world at this time. It seems very utopian in a certain sense, but step by step, by mobilizing on the four fields in which we have to act, education, media, migration and youth, try to see how can we step by step put things better. It sounds utopian, I admit, but by mobilizing states, by having states presenting their national strategies on cultural diversity, on cultural dialogue, by partnering with international organizations who deal with these programs and how are they going to put them under the auspices also of the United Nations. It's the cultural pillar, as I discovered to say, you know. And of course, you do have a lot of diversity nowadays. There will be a century of migrations, diversity. Cities are different than they were 20 years ago. I can tell you as a former mayor that minorities now are everywhere, and you have to deal with that.
But the Alliance of Civilizations really is in response to the division that seems to be there between the Muslim world and the Western world, as it seems.
That is one of the items which we have to address ourselves, but of course I see it in a larger perspective without forgetting that one. And if we can advance on what we say is dialogue between West and Islam, but after all, Islam exists in the West also, and so it's not that dichotomic, how you say this in English, I don't know. Yeah, it's not a dichotomy really, right. But it's more or less that's the mandate really.
Ironic, you know, heading up the Alliance of Civilizations when most people are talking about the clash of civilizations.
That's precisely why it appeared. One can't go on without doing anything which will then project us into what some say the clash of civilizations. There's a way, there's an alternative way, and to see if in fact we can work together, we can understand the other, we can understand his religion, we try to barricade ourselves against extremism and by, of course, economic development, etc., which also is a base for, as we are seeing that employment, for example, in this Middle East area is an essential development for the future.
Now, it's going to, as we'll discover in this interview, you've had a passion for a while to speak out and take on causes. What is it that drives you? What is it that makes you, I mean, do you feel you achieve something tangible in the work you do?
I think that if we maintain our values, and my values are democracy, liberty, understanding the other, solidarity, these are basic human values as such, and I had a family education which brought this up all the time. I mean, my mother was educated in England, and she was, you know, avant la lettres, someone who did not vote, because ladies did not vote in Portugal until very late. But anyway, she had this democratic background. And my father was a public health man for years and years, and that he applied there his wide democratic perspective. And we were brought up, myself and my brother, in this kind of international and national surroundings.
It was interesting because you were born in Lisbon, but very soon you were traveling to the United States, and you were regularly in England as well because your father was a doctor and he was traveling as well.
I was in the States in the normal school, like any American boy, in 1948, 47, 48. My father was taking his master's degree at Johns Hopkins, and then I went to London with them for the vacation, and I traveled quite a lot, yes. And then, of course, later on in politics, I was international secretary for what we call the Portuguese Socialist Party, which is equivalent to the Labour Party in England. And then international secretary, I went everywhere. And so, my family was also, their friends were very international because of these medical backgrounds. So, in fact, there was a mixture of Portuguese and international people going around our house all the time. And I spoke English to my mother. We were 50%, you know. English and Portuguese was a terrible mixture, but everyone's startled to this. But that is how it was.
I know on your mother's side, your mother's father was a political man. He actually ended up as Minister of Foreign Affairs.
He was a naval officer.
Right.
And he was part of the coup d'etat of 26, which was then, later on, totally occupied by Salazar. Those military people at the time were against the total confusion that the First Republic produced and the difficult situation. And then, of course, there were the Republicans and the monarchists in those military people, and he was part of the Republicans, but he was then ousted from foreign minister by Salazar, when really Salazar picked up and controlled the government as from 1930, something like that.
So there was politics in the family. There was politics sort of running through the blood.
Yes, that's true. That's true. At least some dedication with the general problems of the world, and BBC being heard. You can't imagine what war times were in our country, you see, because our country, the political dictators started with Nazi support, discreet, but and then they ended up with allies. And in the train from where I lived, where my father took up that train to come to the Bacteriological Institute and Virology Institute, there was places where those who heard BBC every night were discussing, and those who were in favor of the Nazis were discussing on the other side of the carriage, you see. This was like that, divided. And the secret police was identifying people at the station in Lisbon, the people who were in favor of the Allies at a certain time.
You had a fantastic mix in your family as well, though, because I know your maternal grandmother, who married the naval officer, was Sephardic Jew, originally from Portugal, but from Morocco.
Yes. I
know you joke about, you know, your very favorite Jewish cousin, and of course there's Jewish roots here. But in the end, you ended up agnostic yourself.
Yes.
Did religion not really play a big part in the family?
I would say that my father was a Christian without practicing, but really agnostic in the end. My mother was a Jew by origin, and then ended up through Catholicism and with no religion at all. And I was a Catholic until 17, 18, and then I stopped really, and I consider myself agnostic then. This gives me, as a president of my country, elected in 96, let me tell you this. I was asked, which was an extraordinary question to be asked in Portugal, which is mainly a Catholic country, sir, do you believe in God? A colleague of yours in an interview during the electoral campaign. And I could have found a different sentence said, like my predecessor, Mário Soares, was brilliant in that response, saying, I was not touched by the grace of believing, you know. And I said, I don't believe in God. Like that. And that was a very complicated issue. But I must say that I was elected because, in fact, everyone knew that I was an open-minded person. I talked with everyone, from Catholics to Muslims to Jews to atheists to everyone. And this probably caught me ever since. And I can say that I was seen as a president someone who really had the open mind and spoke to everyone.
It's true, you were actually very active. The political interest sort of started during the university years. What gave you that passion at 21 when you were resisting the fascist dictatorship of Salazar?
Because we wanted liberty. The country was totally limited. The colonial war had started. There was really no future in front of us. Well, we were few at the university. I mean, to give you an idea of my country now, at that time, only the elite went to university. I was, you know, I had luck to go. And we were about 35,000 or 40,000. Now we have 400,000 in faculties. So this gives you the change with the same population, more or less. But in fact was, first of all, the family education, the reading of French, social democratic and English writers, etc., and the debate I told you about, and then the need to fight for liberty. And the associations in the faculties which were tolerated by the regime were in fact important sources for the mounting up of a general democratic movement, which helped the military, because when we were mobilized to go to the army as not career officers, but as officers mobilized as normal soldiers, then this interaction, which normally is not spoken of, really produced the need for the military started to understand that colonial war could not end without a political solution. So this was important. The students coming from strikes at the university were totally mobilized because we had the right to finish our university studies. The regime wanted that because they wanted the lawyers, the doctors, the engineers to go to the armed forces. But those who were, after the crisis, mobilized immediately, that process started then, and I think it played an important role in 1974 with the revolution.
Well, I want to get on to what happened post that 74 period when you started to get into politics. We're going to take a very short break here. We're back with more one-on-one in just a moment.